When I think of negotiation, I think the ABCD, we have to start with the D. So it is not with the A, D being the desired outcome.
Hello and welcome to the first in-person episode of 100 Sum Game. I'm your host, Adele, a recent economics and psychology grad with experience in finance and marketing, and I'm here to empower you to negotiate, persuade, and influence tactfully in any industry, role, and context. I'm shooting this special episode in person with a unique guest, Dr. Haniyeh Yousoufpour, a Harvard-educated, award-winning global business professor and a consultant with a passion for organizational change management, influential leadership, and negotiations. She frequently gives keynote speeches, teaches topics like negotiation and organization behavior at various industries globally, and is currently a partner at a professional training and coaching company called Lenovo. At Lenovo, Dr. Haniyeh is helping integrate industry best practices with academic research to aid organizations deliver impact. And Lenovo partners with top organizations like GlaxoSmithKline, Royal Bank of Canada, Samsung, Four Seasons, and many more. And we are live today at their office in downtown Toronto. Welcome, Dr. Haniyeh. It's a lot. You've done so much, and I know you're so busy, so thank you for taking this time. And you honored me with coming on my podcast.
No, it's my pleasure to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Of course. Okay, this is so exciting. So I think first I want to know, what do you think made you an expert in negotiations? Like, were you always good at it? Did you get interested in it at a young age? Like, how did it start?
Sure. I mean, there are a couple of things that happened to guide me through this path to focus on negotiation as one of my main areas of expertise. At younger age, I always liked to negotiate for things, to persuade others, try to find a way to reach an agreement. And later on, when I started working, it was just by pure chance that I ended up in a procurement department at Johnson & Johnson.
Oh, yeah, right.
And I became the lead negotiator on various categories for the organization. And that was kind of the start of my professional life in negotiation. At university, I took negotiation courses. And when I graduated and I started teaching MBA level courses, negotiation was one of the main courses that I started to teach. I really enjoyed it. I learned that this is an area that I can explore more. And then when I went to Harvard, I focused on negotiation more. And the academic background combined with the professional part of my career just made me more and more interested in negotiation. But I truly do believe that negotiation skills are essential, both for personal and professional life. And it is something that we start leveraging at early ages, and something that we continue to utilize in our life, both personally and professional into adulthood.
Yeah, I know you speak a lot about it, how we sort of approach this topic both in a personal life and a professional life. And I fully agree. Like, that's sort of what we speak here in this podcast as well. I'm so glad that you can offer, different perspectives on that end. My next question is, curious what your unique approach to negotiations is. I know you have some methodologies in place, for example, the ABCD of negotiations. So could you elaborate more on that and your unique approach?
Sure, absolutely. So a lot of people, when they think of negotiation, they focus on the end results. And it's more of a bargaining game of what agreement you're going to reach. When I think of negotiation, I think the ABCD, we have to start with the D. So it is not with the A, D being the desired outcome. We have to be very clear about what we want to get out of this interaction. We have to do our homework, do our research, be fully informed of why we are having this interaction and what we are hoping to get out of this. Then we move to the C, which is understanding the circumstances under which we are negotiating. because what is happening externally is going to impact the outcome of the negotiation. If there are any cultural differences, any economical pressure, any political changes, they all are going to impact how we are negotiating. Regardless of what kind of negotiation we're having, there are always external factors that we have to understand, and the circumstances, the urgency of reaching agreement. And then we move to the B, and the B is for the beneficiary analysis. And it's important to understand who are the people that are going to be impacted by the outcome of this negotiation. Because often people that you're negotiating with are not all the people that are going to be impacted.
People are in the backstage, right?
People are in the backstage. There may be decision makers. There may be people who have an interest, people who want you to reach an agreement, and people who will benefit if you don't reach an agreement. So you have to kind of do a scan of all the beneficiaries that are interested in the outcome of this negotiation, and then understand the people you're negotiating with, what kind of character they have, what is their style. And then we get to the A, which is the actual act of negotiation.
Oh, okay.
So, logically, when we think, oh, we have to start with the A, and we have to get prepared for the actual negotiation, and then everything else follows. But my focus actually starts at the D. We need to know the desired outcome. You need to do your circumstance analysis. You need to understand the beneficiaries, and then you get to the negotiation stage and the act of negotiation.
That's a really good methodology there. That's a really good framework of thinking about it. One follow-up question I have on that, when you're speaking about it, I kind of thought about it, is that what if we've done our research on the circumstances on the C, however, at the table, when we get to the stage A, we get faced with a situation, a circumstance that we had no clue about. And then at the moment we I didn't calculate. It wasn't in my thinking or analysis. When that happens, how do you go about the situation?
Okay, that's a great question. So the A, I actually say triple A approach. And the triple A approach is ask, analyze, adapt. Because many other things in life, it is not the most persuasive person that can be an effective negotiator. First, you have to be prepared. A prepared negotiator will always outperform an unprepared negotiator. But at the table, the approach should be the triple A. You have to ask questions. You will always get information at the table that you did not know about. Then you have to analyze, what does that mean? What does this new circumstances mean? What does this new sense of urgency mean? And kind of analyze it based on information that you have prepared for and what you are getting at the table. And then you need to adapt your approach, because you walk in with some level of preparation thinking, this is the strategy I'm going to apply. But at the negotiation table, you have to be adaptive, because there will be information, behavior, pieces of nuance to information that you did have that is going to require you to change your approach. So you have to be adaptive.
How do we deal with this emotional impact of being faced with an unprecedented question or circumstance?
For sure. I mean, so there are a few things that could be done. Number one is, at the heart of everything sits self-awareness. If you know yourself and you know what kind of situation is going to make you anxious, then you want to go in prepared, knowing that if something happens and you are experiencing those feelings and emotions, how are you going to respond to that? So you have to be prepared. The second thing is, in negotiation or any difficult conversation, the power of pause. Take a few seconds. Because the difference between reacting to a situation emotionally or responding is those few seconds that you take to pause, analyze the question or the situation, and then respond with control. Now, if those few seconds are not enough, what would be really a good strategy is to ask a question, whether it is just paraphrasing what you were asked, to say, just to make sure I understand your question,
I do that.
This is what you're asking. And that will give you more time to organize your thoughts. And also, in the response, you may get more information that will help you better prepare to respond to that. But the other thing is also that preparation. If you know from past experiences that this is something that may happen, and there will always be questions or situations that are not expected and you have to respond to it, is just knowing that it's coming will make you more prepared not to react quickly and kind of take control of the situation.
So you talk a lot about authentic impact. Curious what that means, and can you elaborate more on that?
Sure, absolutely. So I talked about authenticity and maximum impact point in two areas. One is the importance of authenticity within negotiation, believing what you are asking for and just acting in a way that is aligned with who you are and what you value. And then I talk about finding your maximum impact point or MIP, where you are aware of your values, your aspirations, what you want to do. And then you are realistic about your ability, your resources, your expertise. And then you have done your research and have a good understanding of the environment that you're operating in and what are the needs of that environment, the people you are working with. And then your maximum impact point where you can be most influential and most impactful is when the three of them align. So between your aspirations and what you want to do, your capabilities and what you can do, and the environment that you are operating in and what is needed within that environment, these three will align at some point, and that's where you can be most impactful. And again, that's just general in anything that you do. You want to kind of find your MIP. Specifically in negotiation, it's important to know what kind of a person you are, what kind of a negotiator you want to be, because people have different limits. They have different habits. And they have a different sense of right or wrong for themselves, right? They have a different limitation. So you have to be very aware of who you are as a person and what are your values. Then when you are negotiating, you want to be realistic about the resources that are available to you. What can you offer? What can you compromise on? What can you add value to? What can you kind of let go? So you have to be very realistic about your ability and what you can offer at the negotiation table. And then you have to understand the other parties that are involved, the importance of the issues that you are negotiating about, and then find where you can best match these three to come with that optimal agreement within the negotiation.
I hear you mentioning self-awareness and like one's negotiating style.
Yes.
So I think whether you're an accommodator, whether you're more assertive, more talkative, etc., how does one find out their negotiating style, do you think? And like, what are some of the styles, and which style do you think we should try to be more close to?
Sure. Well, there are two things. There is a natural style that people have where in a situation, that's the style that's easiest for them to follow. And then there are situations that different styles are more effective for. When we are negotiating, there are two things that we always have to consider. The importance of the relationship with the people that we are negotiating with, and the importance of the outcome and the agreement that we're going to reach. When you are negotiating with people that are important to you and you want to keep the relationship personally or professionally, but at the same time, the issues that you're negotiating about are important, then you want to be as collaborative as possible. And when you are being collaborative in negotiation, you're trying to expand the pie, meaning that you're trying to create value to have more win-win situations. There are times that you really care about the outcome, but the relationship with the people you're negotiating with is not as important. This is a one-time deal. You may never work with that person ever again, but the budget of this project is extremely important for you. So you're going to be more competitive and push to get as much value for yourself as possible. And you will prioritize the agreement in your favor compared to the relationship with the people you're negotiating with. There are other times that the relationship is more important. You are negotiating over issues that are not as important, and you have more flexibility to let them go. But the relationship with the people that you are negotiating with is extremely important, and you're going to be more accommodating, and you're going to prioritize your relationship with the other parties over the tangible outcome of the agreement. And then there are times that you don't care about either. And you are in a situation that you are being pushed into corner to negotiate with people that you don't have any relationship with over issues that you don't really care about. And you're just going to avoid it and try to walk away from the situation. It could also be that at this moment, this is not a topic for you to prioritize to negotiate, and you're going to avoid this negotiation at this moment. And then the last style is when you are compromising. And mistakenly, many people associate negotiation with compromising. And in compromise, what you're really doing is you are trying to have all sides give up something so that you can get closer to an agreement. But that is different than collaborating. In collaboration, you're trying to add value. In compromise, you are kind of you're keeping the size fixed, and you're trying to give as equal amount as possible to everybody. And sometimes when you have negotiated and you have collaborated on many issues, there is a time limit. You kind of want to make sure that this agreement happen. Then you may compromise on one or more issues at the end. But generally, the most win-win situation is when you are collaborating with people, getting creative, coming up with different alternatives that everybody will get more out of this agreement.
Okay, so like adapting to like different situations and or aspirations, basically. One question I had is I heard a feedback from my listeners that they were really curious about how one can influence others without authority. For example, if you're negotiating, if you're at the table with like a senior leader where you're like a junior analyst, or like could be any other situation, professional or personal. What are your tips for negotiating if one party objectively has less power than their counterpart?
To answer that question, first you have to define what's power and what's authority. Because part of authority comes with title. But a lot of authority comes from knowledge, expertise, your credibility. So just because someone has a more senior title compared to you does not necessarily mean you have no power. Because if you are in a situation where people are interested to listen to what you have to say, you have earned the right to be there. And you need to believe that. You need to believe that, you're here for your expertise. You're here for your expertise. You're here for your knowledge. You're here for your credibility. Therefore, there is an interest to hear what you have to say. That's the first thing. Then the second part of that is that how you behave to articulate the point that you have, to make sure that you're telling a compelling story, that you're providing evidence for what you are recommending, and it's on you and how you are presenting your case. And the other part is to understand the other party. What is their interest? What are they hoping to get? What is most important to them? And then adapting your story, your recommendation, and present it in a way that they can see the value to them. They can see how does this agreement or this recommendation meet their needs or address their interests. So there are a few parts that you have to consider. One is believing in yourself and having the confidence that there's a reason for you to be there. Two is being able to articulate your point in a compelling and credible way. And three is to really understand the other party, what their interests are, and try to position your offer in a way that they can see the value to themselves. But one thing that for sure is important is every time you do walk into a negotiation table, you have to have a plan B. You have to be very clear. If you don't reach an agreement, what are you going to do? Because that's going to determine your power at the negotiation table. and it's going to determine how flexible you're going to be. For instance, a job interview, and then eventually, if it's successful, it will lead to compensation negotiation.
Yeah.
And if you already have a job that pays you certain amount of compensation and you are negotiating for a new job, if you don't get a better compensation package or total employment experience, then you have less pressure to accept that offer, and you have more power to walk away and say, you know what, my plan B or my BATNA is to just stay at the job that I currently have. But if you're the same person with the same skills and you are having this negotiation for the new compensation at a time that you're unemployed, that's a completely different story. Because if you don't reach an agreement here, your BATNA or best option is to remain unemployed. So you want to kind of be very clear, because that's going to impact how you will behave at the negotiation.
That's so true. 100%. My other question is on more like the emotions that are present at the table. The other party just acts in a very, maybe in a negative way. They're in like a bad mood. Like there are negative emotions present for one reason or the other. So how can we diffuse those negative emotions without being taken advantage in a negotiation setting?
Sure. I mean, people are emotional decision makers. We think logically, and some people think more emotionally than logically. But even if you think logically, you do your pros and cons, you feel you're in control. When it comes to that moment that you have to make a decision, it is very emotional, because you have to, even all of that logic has to sit right for you to proceed. So whenever you're negotiating, again, you're dealing with emotions, your emotions as well as the other party's emotions, right? So first thing that you should focus on is managing your own emotions. Because if the other party says something that is unreasonable in your way of thinking, or they say something that really triggers you, upsets you, brings out a negative emotion, you want to be able to first manage your own emotions. So again, going in, you want to be aware of the emotional state that you are in, walking into the situation. Because if there has been some background, if there has been some disagreement with that person in the past, you're already walking in with emotional charge, and you have to be aware of that.
And the other party is
also coming with their emotional charge. So the first thing that you have to do is really like focus on your own emotions. How are you feeling? What has triggered this? What is the underlying reason? How can you neutralize that? How can you manage that before you walk in? Now, the other part you have to prepare for is what things can happen, just the same scenario analysis that you do, that will trigger negative emotions in you or positive emotions in you, because you may as well walk into a situation and you're just very happy and you're going to accept an agreement that is less than ideal just because you're in a positive emotion.
True.
So it can be like, it doesn't matter if it's positive or negative. It's just that at that moment, you would make quicker decisions because of the emotional state that you're in. So it's very important that before a major negotiation, for you to be aware of your emotions, be aware of what may trigger your emotions, positive or negative, and how you're going to respond. And again, the power of pause applies here too. Don't make commitments one way or another. Try to pause. Now, if you have been able to neutralize yourself, but the other party is not, and they are escalating. So one thing is to try to take a break, like to have a conversation and say, like it seems that we're going in the wrong direction. Before you pass a certain point, let's take a break. Let's come back to this, so that they get a chance to kind of reflect and be in a more neutral state. Sometimes it is that you talk to them and you may make them aware. Because sometimes people are not aware. It's like, are you aware that you have a very negative attitude toward any option that I am offering? So that like to raise that awareness, but you kind of have to make the judgment call. And sometimes it is just now does not seem to be a good time to reach an agreement, because what you want to avoid is going down a path that now you pass a threshold that you cannot come back to. So if you see that this is just going in the wrong direction, it's better to stop and come back much later, not a break, but like come back to it as a much later time.
Yeah. Awareness of your own emotional state, whether negative or positive, but even positive can work in contrary to what you're hoping.
Yeah, for sure.
That was a really interesting but important call out. Before I ask you more about your book, I want to ask this question that I ask to almost all of my guests. What is the one thing you absolutely avoid in negotiations and why?
I never take an initial no as an answer.
Okay. How do you go about that without being pushy?
One thing is the first time you are phrasing your ask is not to put the other party in a situation to give you a no. That would be ideal if you can. So, for instance, the question is not, oh, can you give me a higher salary or not? That's the wrong question.
Yeah.
The question should be, are there any other part of the compensation that you could be more generous?
Yep.
Or which part of the compensation package you can be more generous, right? So it's not more a yes or no answer, but you are changing the question.
Yep, reframing.
And if you've already got there and you've heard no, it's not too late. You can still rephrase the question. Can I get a discount on this car? No. Okay, I understand. I understand that there may be limitations. Are there any other perks that you can give me within the same budget? So that you just rephrase the question to see where you can go. And the more complex the negotiation is, the question would reflect that. But I think if you don't ask, you don't get. And when you hear an initial no, you may end up at a no afterward, but you have to try. You have to try at least asking the question in a different way, so that if you're walking away with a no, you're walking away knowing that you did whatever you could do. Because negotiation is not so much about the actual outcome of the negotiation. It is about how you feel about the outcome.
And how the other person feels about you, right? And the outcome.
So it's about the perception of it. Because, sometimes you can even ask for something and you can get everything that you ask for, but you will walk away with winner's curse, because if it came to you too easily, then you're walking away getting everything that you asked for, but thinking, I should have asked for more. That is less satisfying than if you negotiated back and forth and you got less than what you asked for, but you feel like you had to work hard for it, and actually you were able to push the boundaries. So the outcome is less than the other one, but you're walking away feeling better and more accomplished and more satisfied with the negotiation outcome.
Yeah. No, that's so true, because whenever we work hard for something, it just becomes more valuable. It's not the same topic, but it ties to what they call IKEA Effect. I think one part of the IKEA Effect is because we buy a table and then we assemble it, which researchers say that we value it more just because we assembled it. We worked hard for it. Because almost in that sense, if you get maybe a better deal with less effort put in, then it's harder to appreciate it and value it. So you have to think about it for the other party as well, how hard the other party worked for it. And then even if they got less, but they worked hard for it. So now I know that they're going to appreciate, right?
For sure.
I know you're in the process of releasing your first book. So why don't you tell us about your book and what's it about and what motivated you to write a book?
Sure. So it's about negotiation.
Yeah.
Always negotiate. Building the confidence to ask. So I am very big on developing confidence. And in any class that I teach, I always say, you have to walk away with three things from this session. Number one is more confidence to ask and negotiate. Number two, higher self-awareness of what kind of a negotiator you are, what kind of a person you are. And that's something that always comes up in anything that I talk about or teach.
Yeah.
And then third is some skills and tools to negotiate successfully. So this is it's just a book because throughout my teaching, I have developed my own method and working with different clients. I have collected all of my learning and my experience. So the book talks about the ABCD of negotiation, getting into each part in more detail and what kind of questions to ask. And then the 3A methodology, asking the right questions, how to analyze information, how to adapt, and then just understanding different phases of negotiation and how to be more effective, getting that information that you need and just becoming more confident to ask. So it's a lot around asking questions. That is one skill that will really differentiate a good negotiator from a great negotiator, is the ability to get the right information, to analyze it, and then to adapt an innovative way to reach an optimal agreement.
When do you think it's going to be released? Like how far out?
Well, it's in the final edit, so I'm hoping 2024 is the year, but keeping your fingers crossed.
Lovely. And where will it be available? Would it be in like just a digital copy or like a physical copy?
No, a physical copy as well.
Sure. Yeah. Okay. And will it be available like on all sort of bookstores? And
well, ideally, I mean that once it comes, then it would be available in the major, in the major
bookstores. Okay, TBD on that. Well, thank you so much for making this time to chat about both the art and science of negotiation with me and giving all your invaluable insights. I learned a lot. I feel like my listeners are going to learn a lot. And thank you so much.
No, thank you. It was great to have an opportunity to talk about something that I'm very passionate about.
My name is Adele, and you have listened to an episode from 100 Sum Game. You like it here? Go ahead and subscribe to 100 Sum Game on your preferred platform. While you're at it, I'd love to hear about what you're thinking of this podcast, any episode requests, or further feedback. It'll help me make this podcast better for you. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I'll catch you in the next episode. Peace.